हेलो बच्चों, कैसे हैं आप लोग? और अपने होमवर्क्स कर रहे हैं आप लोग जो स्कूल से मिल रहे हैं? आई एम श्योर आप सभी बच्चे बहुत ही डिसिप्लिन्ड और बहुत ही अच्छे बच्चे हैं और मम्मी पापा की पूरी बात मान रहे हैं, है ना? और बीच बीच में जब हमें ब्रेक लेना होता है या रात को सोने के लिए हमें कुछ पढ़ने की या कहानी सुनने की ज़रूरत होती है, तो आप अवलोकिता आंटी की कहानियाँ सुन रहे हैं, है ना? तो आपके लिए मैं आज कुछ और कहानियाँ लेके आई हूँ। और ये जो कहानियाँ हैं जो मैं आपको आज सुनाने जा रही हूँ, ये हमारे देश के, भारत के इतिहास से जुड़ी हुई हैं, हिस्ट्री से जुड़ी हुई हैं। और बहुत ही जो महान कुछ राजा हुए हैं या बहुत अच्छे धार्मिक गुरु हुए हैं, स्पिरिचुअल गुरुज जो हुए हैं, कुछ उनकी कहानियाँ अगले 3-4 एपिसोड्स में मैं आपके लिए लेके आऊँगी। तो ये जो बुक मैंने उठाई है आज, ये है द बुक इज़ कॉल्ड वंस अपॉन अ टाइम and it is written by M. Choksi and P.M. Joshi. And the illustrator, again, as I usually keep showing you, so this book is also full of illustrations, and the illustrator is Pulak Biswas, and the publishing house is National Book Trust of India. Again, I encourage all of you to read the books which are published by NBT India, because they pick up stories from India, and most of their books are written. In fact, I think all of their books are written by Indian authors. And I think it is our duty, our responsibility, that we read our own authors and encourage them, because somehow we have picked up, as a fashion of reading the books by foreign authors. So, you young children, and even us as grown ups, are so fascinated by the books which the foreign authors are writing, that we often tend to forget about our own authors, and they write fabulously, they write really good stories. So, as a conscious choice, I bring to you the stories which are written by Indian authors. So, here this is the first story in the series where I pick up the Indian authors and the Indian uh, historical glorious stories. So, this one is of the title of the story is Karla, a great Buddhist monastery. So, do you know where Karla is? Karla, as the title of the story tells, is it has a great Buddhist monastery, and it is near Bombay, Mumbai, as we know it today, and it is a rock cut cave Buddhist architecture. And a monastery is a place where these Buddhist monks, Buddhist bhikshu जिन्हें हम कहते हैं, these Buddhist monks used to stay and complete their religious education and go on to propagate, to promote the religion and carry forward the spiritual learning process. So, this one is about Karla, a great Buddhist monastery. And by the way, Karla has some beautiful architecture. It has outstanding architecture. The carvings that it has on its walls and pillars were all done by these monks, these Buddhist monks. The subjects which are depicted on the walls and pillars, and the finesse with which this work has been executed, is just worth watching. So, next time when your parents plan a vacation, you may suggest them that you can actually go to Karla and visit the monastery. Okay, so here we start the story. Nearly 2000 years ago, in the shadow of the great hill of the Western Ghats, now called Karla, lay the village of Valuraka at the foot of the climb to the Karla caves. The Deccan was thickly forested then, and wild animals prowled close to the homes of men. The forest villages prospered in the days of the great Satvahana dynasty, for strong kings maintained peace and order. In this rugged country, where there were no great roads as in the plains of North India, hill after hill rose in steps or ghats that fell steeply to lower levels. But there were a few paths, up and down, which pack animals carried goods. Jimut, the little goatherd, lived in this village below Karla in the second century AD. The village huts were made of mud and wattle, and the people were hardy and were happy as long as the rulers gave them protection both from attacking enemies and grasping officials. Jimut's life, however, was hard. He was an orphan and lived with his uncle and aunt in a hut on the outskirts of the village. His uncle's patches of cultivation did not thrive, and his mainstay was a small flock of goats. His aunt was ill tempered, and she often treated Jimut harshly. Because of his quarrelsome ways, because of her quarrelsome ways, his uncle Kalha had no share in the lower pastures. So every day at dawn, Jimut took the flock up to the scanty pastures on the hill with a piece of black bajri bread for his day's food, and he returned at sunset. As Jimut made his way up the steep hillside, he usually stopped for a while on a plateau halfway up. Here, on a broad, flat ledge, there was a Buddhist cave monastery and settlement, which had been there for nearly 300 years. Jimut loved to gaze at the stately pillars leading to the main cave and the beautiful triple arch at the entrance. Along the paths and in the caves moved or sat motionless, saffron robed figures with close cropped hair, chanting in hushed voices or absorbed in meditation. Sometimes he could hear the words of their chant: the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, these are my refuge. Among the worshippers, one very old monk often patted Jimut and gave him his blessing. Jimut longed to know the meaning of the scene before him: the vast dark hall, the great semicircular mound in its depths, the tall pillars, the beautiful carvings of men, women, animals, and foliage. As old monk Madhusudan stopped to bless him, Jimut would try to summon up enough courage to ask him. But just when he was about to question him, the old man would move on. This was nearly 4 centuries after the great Emperor Ashoka. Through the missions he had sent, the message of Buddhism was carried throughout his vast empire and to the kings who were his allies. Buddhist establishments had sprung up everywhere. From the 2nd century BC, Buddhist monks hollowed out places of worship and dwellings around them, from the face of hills and gorges. Each cave settlement centered around the Chaitya, or hall of worship, in which stood the stupa with some relic of the Buddha buried deep within. One of the most beautiful and prosperous of the Deccan Buddhist settlements was the one at Karla. These hillside settlements were a shrine where people worshipped, a monastery where the monks lived, and also a college where the Buddhist teaching was maintained and passed on. Each elder monk or thera was the guru to a group of younger monks, whose studies he supervised. Religious and philosophical discussions were conducted by the senior monks in the viharas, or great assembly halls, and attended by both residents and visitors. The hillside monasteries were in close contact with the village people in the plain below. Pious people went up frequently to worship at the shrine. On feast days, rows of little lamps lit up the settlement, and people went up all day and night with their offerings. Jimut led a lonely life. His aunt and uncle were not popular because they were so quarrelsome. And besides, Jimut was out from dawn to dusk with his goats. So his playmates were the hills and rocks. One evening, when his uncle was sitting outside the hut talking to some villagers, Jimut asked, Tata, who are those priests in yellow robes who live in the stone house on the hillside? They are beggars, said his uncle sorely. They do nothing all day, and they come round begging for food. The bhikshus are not beggars, protested an elder of the village. They live in poverty and they do not ask for food. It is true that a young monk comes down daily to the village and goes round with his bowl, but he does not ask for anything. Devout people are glad to set aside a share of their meal for the monk's bowl. They have grain and oil in their storehouses, said Kalha. Yes, said the elder. Kings and nobles have assigned villages whose produce goes to the monastery. Donors have contributed pillars, arches, water cisterns, and other parts of the cave dwellings. The good monks care for the sick and bring them remedies from their herb gardens, said another man. Still another added, once, when my cow had strayed and I was looking for it, the monks helped me find it. And when the harvest failed some years ago, added another, the monks gave grain and helped many families to keep alive. And at other times, whom does the grain in their storehouse feed? Asked Kalha resentfully. It feeds the monks and their guests, travelers, pilgrims, and students who come to visit and learn from them, said the elder. Because the monks do good work, people are anxious to supply their needs, and they have few needs. Just look at the great stone house and its carvings of richly dressed people, said the grumbler.